So the final thing I want to do is I want to show you just a physics volume. So right here we have this little vent, and I want to imagine that this vent's our diving board, and what I'll do is it'll shoot people up into air and then they'll land. So I'll reposition and resize the brush, and I'll scale it down. And remember, all the volumes with the exception of the ladder volume can be any shape, so you can use any of these shapes around. This is handy for the one that I like to use and I see people commonly using is there's an actual trigger volume. If you add a default trigger, it's a cylinder, but if you go and you create your own, you can have any shape and size that you can use to actually trigger an event, which can be helpful. Okay, so we got our quote-unquote diving board, and I'm going to add a physics volume. And if I move this away, you can see here's my physics volume. And at this point, it's not going to do anything if I go into it. But if I open up, you'll see that there's different properties. Just to explain a couple, there's friction. If you turn that off, it'd be like being on ice. Terminal velocity is the maximum speed you can go. It basically represents air resistance. If you set this to below 100 and someone falls into this physics volume, they will look like they're floating. And then zone velocity is basically the equivalent if you think of like gravity. So you can do it in different directions. So up is z in this world. So if we do a positive 25, what will happen is I'll go play it. I'll walk over. Nothing happens, but the instant I hit the space bar, I go up and into space. And then to kind of add a little bit of detail to it, we can add a push. I already figured this out, basically -10. And what this will do is if I go and I stand in this space, you'll see how it slowly pushes me. So the problem with going up is you're basically fighting against gravity, so that becomes an issue. If you want to do it proper, you probably have to add a gravity volume as well in order to get everything to look. Now, there's a thing that's kind of like a volume. It's not necessarily a volume, but it behaves like it. And if you go into actor class, you'll see there's a fog, and then there's a fog volume constant density. And if we right click and we add that, you'll see that it creates it. Now, it doesn't use the builder brush to create it. It just creates in the world. It's like its own, basically, box volume. So I can take this, and the only reason I'm going to use this is just so I have a way so you can see where this little air lift exists. But it's kind of just a helpful way, and you can tell it's a custom object because it has a little dinosaur head, which is basically for special placeable actors. Build one last time, and go and run around, play from here. And you can see now we got our fog. We can go in here, we can jump. Now once again I gotta jump, go up, splash in, go swimming around the pool, and come out, and that completes it. So if we look at the volumes, just to wrap up, blocking volumes basically keep people from going in and out. Calling distance is visibility. These enable you to move. You can force direction. There's a couple of one of those. There's a gravity volume, which is basically specialized physics. Ladder volume we did. Light importance volume is you basically put it around a space and it will only render using light mask the things that are inside that space, which is very handy for big scenes. It saves processor power. We already talked about the physics, post-process, procedural buildings actually for making modular buildings, reverbs for sound. Trigger we already talked about. There's an auto crouch which forces the character to go down. Dynamic water which enables you to move the volume. Kill zone. Lava and slime, which are basically modified versions of water. And that's it. So there's unfortunately not a lot of information, so you just kind of got to play around and get familiar with it. And that finishes this lecture on volumes.